Wait, what if everything you thought you knew about Avengers Doomsday is wrong? What if the real story has been hiding between the lines of every multiverse hint, every broken timeline, and every quiet sacrifice, setting up a final collision that redefines heroism, betrayal, and survival across every corner of Marvel history? My 99% accurate theory begins with Doctor Strange no longer trying to fix the future but trying to escape it, because what he saw after Endgame was not victory but a delayed extinction event triggered by the Avengers themselves, a silent countdown that began the moment Tony snapped his fingers. That snap did not just erase Thanos and his army, it punched a permanent scar through the multiverse, and the shockwave rippled across realities, awakening sleeping threats and destabilizing time-anchored beings who now sense that Earth is the fracture point around which all universes will eventually collapse. The first warning came in WandaVision disguised as grief, but the chaos magic surges were actually multiversal distress flares. Each reality she touched weakened further, making it easier for larger forces to map Earth as the central convergence coordinate for the coming Doomsday-level incursion. Spider-Man No Way Home then revealed the truth without explaining it. People did not cross dimensions accidentally, they were pulled by an unseen gravitational anomaly, and that anomaly was growing stronger every time a hero interfered with fate, meaning every attempt to save the universe was actually dooming it. Further, by the time we reach Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the word incursion is finally spoken, but the danger is softened for the audience because Marvel is hiding scale. An incursion is not two worlds colliding, it is a domino tile that guarantees a chain reaction until nothing remains. Now comes the real foundation of Avengers Doomsday. The multiversal engines are not in space, they are living beings. America Chavez, Wanda Maximoff, and even Loki, whose bodies and power signatures actively stabilize or destabilize reality with every emotional decision they make without understanding the cosmic cost. Loki Season 1 confirmed that time itself can be weaponized, but Season 2 quietly reveals the price. The moment Loki becomes the living power source for the timelines, a countdown begins, because no single being was ever meant to carry infinite realities without eventually fracturing under the weight. What the Avengers Doomsday plot truly centers on is this inevitable fracture point. Loki will fail not from weakness but from overwhelming cosmic pressure, and when he does, every sealed timeline will break loose at once, causing simultaneous incursions across thousands of universes at the exact same moment. This is why Kang variants stop being the main villains midway through the story, because they are no longer the architects of chaos, they become desperate survivors, losing control over the very timelines they once ruled and realizing too late that something far worse than themselves is emerging through the cracks. That something is not a single villain but a cosmic correction force, a living multiversal immune system designed to erase infected realities, and the infected reality is Earth, the one world that keeps rewriting fate through emotional hero-driven decisions rather than cold cosmic equilibrium. This explains why certain characters will be targeted first, not because they are the strongest fighters, but because they are narrative anchors. Captain America figures, Spider-Man, Scarlet Witch figures, and Sorcerer Supremes are the emotional linchpins holding broken timelines together through belief, not physics. The real tragedy of Avengers Doomsday is that the heroes finally realize they are the problem. Every time they save one world, they sentence 10 others to death, and for the first time in Marvel history, the central moral dilemma is no longer about sacrifice, it is about choosing which realities deserve to exist. Thor becomes vital here, not as a warrior but as a relic of the original timeline, one of the few beings who has watched gods fall and universes burn in cycles before, and his knowledge reveals that multiversal extinction events are not new, they are resets that always come after unchecked heroic interference. This reframes Odin warnings from the past and explains why ancient beings feared mortals with cosmic power, because mortals act from attachment, and attachment bends fate in unstable directions, spreading reality fractures, instead of allowing natural endings to occur where timelines should properly conclude. Meanwhile, Sam Wilson struggles not with leadership but with legitimacy, because the new Captain America must represent moral clarity during the most morally impossible crisis in history, deciding who lives and who fades from existence without collapsing under the psychological weight of that godlike responsibility. The young Avengers rise not as replacements but as backup timelines, insurance living contingencies scattered across realities, so that if one heroic team fails, another can continue the mission, showing that Doomsday is not one battle, it is a war fought simultaneously across infinite versions of the same story. This is where the 99% twist hits. The Avengers are not assembling to defeat a villain, they are assembling to disband permanently across different universes, voluntarily scattering their bonds so that Earth is no longer the emotional gravity well pulling all catastrophes toward itself. Iron Man Legacy plays the cruelest role here because Tony Stark unknowingly built the prototype of multiversal self-sacrifice, the idea that one choice in one moment can save infinite lives, but Avengers Doomsday exposes the inverse truth that endless self-sacrifice across time only feeds the cosmic correction machine. A rebuilt Ultron framework even becomes relevant again, not as a villain, but as a cold, calculating observer created to predict extinction probability, and his conclusion is terrifying: that emotional heroism statistically accelerates total universal death rather than preventing it in the long run. The emotional core returns to Peter Parker, who is now the perfect multiversal ghost, forgotten in his own world, untethered from narrative anchors, making him uniquely invisible to cosmic erasure mechanisms, allowing him to move between collapsing realities as a living wild card in the Doomsday equation. Doctor Strange realizes too late that every timeline he ever viewed had the same fixed endpoint: not Thanos, not Kang, but total multiversal sterilization, and the one timeline he believed victorious was simply the most delayed extinction because it relied on emotional loopholes rather than structural balance. Avengers Doomsday then becomes a race not to win, but to redesign what winning even means, shifting the objective from defeating a threat to teaching an entire universe how to stop fighting against cosmic order while still preserving the meaning of heroism without annihilating existence itself. The shocking midpoint reversal happens when the heroes manage to stop a massive multiversal collapse, only to discover that doing so spikes the extinction counter even faster, proving they are now reacting inside a feedback loop where every rescue amplifies the very disaster they are trying to prevent. This forces the unthinkable plan: the Avengers must intentionally allow certain universes to die in a controlled burn to reduce the gravitational pull of emotional interference at the center and weaken the correction force long enough to negotiate reality into a stable multiversal equilibrium state. Wanda returns not as a villain, but as the only being who truly understands the cost of uncontrolled desire, because she already shattered a universe for love and watched it fall, and now she becomes the moral mirror, showing what happens when attachment outruns cosmic responsibility completely. The final act does not revolve around explosions, it revolves around consent: entire populations across realities choosing whether to continue existing or to fade so that others might survive, making Avengers Doomsday the most philosophically brutal storyline Marvel has ever attempted on screen. Loki's failure finally arrives not as death but as release. He lets go of the timeline throne, allowing the multiverse to breathe naturally for the first time in ages, creating chaos but also restoring organic evolution where realities grow and end without forced artificial containment. Now this unleashes the true Doomsday Storm. Thousands of incursions ignite at once, but because Loki released control, they do not chain react, they burn independently like isolated wildfires rather than a planet-killing inferno, proving that control itself was the accelerant all along. Thor witnesses this cosmic wildfire and finally understands why gods must step back, because unchecked power, even when used with love, becomes tyranny over fate, and he chooses for the first time not to answer a call for battle, letting an entire world resolve its own extinction without divine interference. Sam Wilson delivers the defining speech, not about hope but about acceptance, telling survivors that heroism is no longer about stopping death but about guiding life with dignity through endings that can no longer be postponed or rewritten by desperate acts of cosmic rebellion. Peter Parker becomes the final bridge, walking between dying universes, carrying memories between worlds that will never meet again, preserving emotional continuity after physical destruction, making him the living archive of everything that was lost, guaranteeing no reality truly disappears unremembered. The last assembled Avengers do not stand together to fight, they stand together to separate, choosing different universes to protect until those universes naturally stabilize emotionally, ensuring Earth never again becomes the singular emotional reactor that drags infinite disasters toward itself. This is why the title Doomsday is perfect, because the end is not prevented, it is managed, shaped, and humanized rather than artificially delayed, turning extinction into transition rather than violent erasure, rewriting what the word victory even means inside the Marvel storytelling language. In the closing movements, Doctor Strange finally admits that the future was never meant to be controlled, glimpsed, or engineered, only guided with humility and restraint, proving that true wisdom is not about seeing every outcome but accepting that some outcomes must be allowed to exist. As universes fade and stabilize, the multiverse becomes quieter for the first time since Endgame, not safer but balanced, and that balance comes at the cost of the Avengers myth itself, because gods, saviors, and legends cannot exist in a reality that demands emotional restraint above glorious sacrifice. The true legacy of Avengers Doomsday is not a fallen villain, but a fallen idea, the belief that punching harder always fixes cosmic problems, replacing it with the terrifying truth that meaning sometimes comes from stepping back and letting existence follow paths heroes would never choose willingly. Phase by phase, Marvel has been training the audience for this existential shift from victory through power to survival through surrender, using grief, identity loss, and moral fatigue as narrative tools to prepare viewers for a finale where the bravest act is not fighting but letting go. Every multiverse project was never random, it was pressure testing the audience to accept contradictions, simultaneous meanings, and layered emotional truths, because Avengers Doomsday demands viewers accept that multiple wins and losses can exist at the same time without canceling each other out. The 99% solution ends with a universe that no longer worships heroes as fixers but as guides who walk with people through impossible endings, proving that legacy is not about saving everything but about ensuring something meaningful remains after the dust permanently settles when the final incursions extinguish. The sky does not crack, it simply goes quiet and unsettling calm, replacing endless catastrophe, signaling that the era of constant cosmic escalation is finally over, not because evil was defeated, but because the universe has ended its addiction to constant rescue. And that is the hidden truth of Avengers Doomsday. It is not the end of the world, it is the end of the Avengers as we understood them, dissolving the fantasy of infinite second chances and replacing it with a mature universe where consequences are no longer delayed by miracles. This is why Marvel has been hiding real answers in dialogue rather than spectacle, because Doomsday is not about what you see exploding, but what you feel dissolving, the slow, heartbreaking realization that even heroes cannot hold eternity together with willpower alone forever. If this theory is even close to accurate, then Avengers Doomsday will not divide fans by action or casting choices, it will divide them by philosophy, by whether they believe stories should promise endless salvation or prepare us for dignified endings that still carry meaning beyond survival. And if you want more deep multiverse breakdowns, hidden plot predictions, and cinematic psychology that most viewers miss, then make sure you stay connected with this channel, because the Marvel story is far from over, it is only evolving into something far more dangerous, intimate, and unforgettable. The final image of Doomsday will not be a villain defeated, but a horizon opening where silence replaces chaos and survivors look upward, uncertain but alive, proving that the Marvel Universe has finally learned how to breathe without the permanent crutch of cosmic catastrophe driving every new chapter forward. The emotional scars left behind become the foundation for the next saga, where power is treated with suspicion, legacy is measured through restraint, and heroism evolves from dominance into stewardship, marking the beginning of a quieter but far more psychologically intense era of interconnected storytelling across galaxies and realities. Even villains are reshaped by this outcome, because destruction loses spectacle and becomes consequence, forcing antagonists to confront mortality without grandeur and making every conflict smaller but sharper, more personal, and more terrifying, because there is no universal reset waiting to erase mistakes anymore. The Avengers' legacy transforms into a whisper rather than a roar, their symbols weathered, their myths questioned, their victories complicated by the knowledge that survival demanded sacrifice on a scale history will never fully record or emotionally reconcile inside any single surviving timeline. And if this unfolding destiny excites, terrifies, and challenges everything you love about superhero storytelling, then you already understand why Avengers Doomsday might become the boldest risk Marvel has ever taken, and why subscribing for deeper theories, breakdowns, and future predictions will keep you ahead of every reveal.